Okay, welcome everyone. This is the Whitman Finance Committee meeting for Monday, March 15th, 2021. It's 7 o'clock. We're meeting on the virtual Zoom platform. I would like to call your attention to the items on the agenda that was emailed in advance of the meeting. Meeting minutes, we have two outstanding meeting minutes that we do not have. And when they are forwarded from Samantha, I will forward them to the committee for review. The reserve fund stands at $37,321.20. Public forum is temporarily suspended due to the COVID-19 limitations. If anyone from the public wishes to talk to anybody on the finance committee, you can send an email to randerson@whitman/ma.gov. And we will certainly entertain any questions that the public has. Today on new business, we will be discussing the budget, specifically some of the Article 2 items. Under old business, we have our standing subcommittee reports. We have Whitman-Hanson Regional School District Assessment, non-mandated busing, and audit. Also the annual town meeting and special town meeting warrants. And on the old business on the agenda is the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. So at the conclusion of those items, we will hopefully get a little bit of a report from the town administrator, who is joining us on a weekly basis. Thank you very much, Lincoln. And also from the accountant, Ken, also thank you for joining us. So with that, we will move right into our new business. I did have an opportunity when I posted the meeting for next week to stop into Lincoln's office and have a short conversation with Lincoln and Ken to talk about their preparedness to go over the budgets for the departments that are under the purview of the Board of Selectmen Town Administrator. So if, Lincoln, what's your preference? Would you like to screen share a copy of Article 2 as you discussed?
Sure. If someone has a handy copy that they'd like to screen share, that would be great.
Ken, do you? Can you?
I do not.
Well,
Okay.
or I'll figure out a way here. Just a minute.
If you have about an hour, I'll figure out a way too.
Okay. Can you folks see that?
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm happy to go through some of the line items. So my understanding is that this committee hadn't heard, unlike other departments, several sections, as you said, related to the town administrator. So I'm happy to go through those. So on line 5, so the line 5, 6, 7, and 8. Those are the amounts. I mean, I think that you folks have seen those amounts for several times. I'm happy to take any questions about them if you want. The assistant town administrator position, that's a position that I'm going to be looking to go out and post very shortly. So obviously that, that's going to be subject to some conversation with the Board of Selectmen, but that's my intention. The administrative assistant includes currently a nominal 2% increase in salary. This is the standard amount for her duties as recording secretary. The education expenses. So these are amounts that are required by the collective bargaining contract with OPEIU. The members, the staff members at Town Hall who belong to that union, their educational benefits in there, and that is the line item that funds that. As you can see, it's been pretty well expended. This column, by the way, is the amount that was actually expended in fiscal year 2020, the previous fiscal year to what we're in now, of course. Likewise, the sick leave incentive That's similarly to the education expense and the sick leave incentive. Several departments have both of these, in particular the sick leave incentive, and they're funded in each department's line items as necessary. This amount is for the amounts required in the OPEIU contract with those employees at Town Hall. I'm going to admit, Ralph, I guess I have that authority, or maybe you, let's see. I guess I do. The longevity bonus, likewise, that is in the OPEIU contract, and those are amounts required by that contract. The assistant department head, so that is subject to an agreement with, again, in the OPEIU contract, specific to, I'm sorry, I was just looking at this and Ken very nicely sent me that email. Ken, do you have that email handy? Or I'll find it, listing out the folks who receive that.
It was the assistant accountants, the assistant collector, and the assistant town clerk.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is the all other expenses in the town administrator's office. Office supplies, all kinds of any other unrelated expenses related to the town administrator's office that is not being recommended for an increase from fiscal year 2021 to 22. I'll go down to this is something that I learned about recently. The municipal hearings officer. This is a in the Municipal Modernization Act that the state passed in 2016. A municipal hearings officer is required and actually required to be paid that dollar amount for appeals from fees or fines from the fire department, the police department, and the building department. So that's what that is. We have retired Chief Travers is the appointed municipal hearings officer. And then finally, in this section, pilot payment in lieu of taxes. These are payments that are required by the State Department of Revenue for land that the town owns in Rockland. So these are rather than paying taxes, real estate taxes to another municipality. Each municipality in Massachusetts, if land is owned or real estate is owned in another municipality, rather than paying taxes, that municipality is required to pay a payment in lieu of taxes, and that's what this is for the town's real estate in Rockland.
Okay.
So I'll stop there. Any discussion on those items?
Kathleen.
Okay, so let me preface this by saying, Lincoln, I'm thrilled that you're our town administrator, and I really want you to be successful and want to give you the support that you need to be successful. But the line item number 6, the assistant town administrator, the history of that, as I recall, was it was bumped up back in 2016 from about a $67,000 line item by about 30%. And now it's easy to discuss it now because we're not talking personalities, we're talking position. And I understand the rationale that you don't want to train somebody at 65,000 who 2 years or 3 years later leaves for a higher paying job. Is that a reasonable salary for an assistant town administrator in this environment?
Well, I would actually say, and this is a conversation I haven't had in depth with the Board of Selectmen, but since you asked, I would actually say that for a town of our size and complexity and budget, it's less than the going rate of any municipality that I'm aware of our size and budget.
Okay.
And complexity. So what does that mean? That means that, I'm going to attempt to find someone within the budgetary constraints that we have to do to do the work that we need to have done. So I think stay tuned is my best answer. But certainly as the industry goes, that's low.
Okay,
Just
Rosemary,
quickly,
and then Al. Go ahead,
yeah,
Rosemary.
what are the comparative towns that you used You said for our size and to determine that.
Sure. Well, so I know that, I haven't done an exhaustive study,
Okay.
but I just know the market. I certainly know what the market is in Hanover.
Okay.
For what the equivalent position is in Situate. There is not an assistant town administrator in Situate, but there's a staff member that performs similar duties who is paid more than actually $30,000 more than this position that we have funded in Whitman. But I'll admit, I haven't done an exhaustive survey. I would say one other thing, which is I certainly keep an eye on the postings at the Mass Municipal Association website. And certainly, when I'm seeing assistant town administrator or assistant town manager positions there, they're almost always more than that for a community over 10,000 population.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Al, you had a question as well? Go ahead.
Yeah, Lincoln, obviously the salary with the past town administrator or assistant administrator was over $90,000. We also had admin. Is there any way we could merge those together to make you, work that? Would it be a beneficial?
Well, I mean,
I needed admin.
yeah, so-
Kathleen said it was 30%. It was more like 40% plus benefits and all that on top of that. It was huge. It was brutal. And do we need it? And now we anticipated that person was going to get the job, and it didn't happen. And now we're fortunate to have you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
So I think a couple things. So there's certainly, the most, if not all, municipalities, again, of our size would have an assistant town administrator or someone performing those functions. So there's none, again, so I know pretty well what's going on the South Shore, and I didn't do an exhaustive salary survey, but I do know that there's certainly someone who's doing that work or who has that title or a similar title in any town over 10,000 that I'm aware of on the South Shore. I would say, so part of the conversation too about, there's part of it is a personnel conversation that I wouldn't really want to discuss in an open session about the current, we certainly have a very talented person in the office in Lori O'Brien, but I think I'll just say I'm not sure that that's a position that interests her, and I'll just sort of leave it at that. I don't really want to get deeper into it personnel wise. I would certainly say that the amount of work, I think, certainly indicates that position is needed for the town. But that's my opinion. And I just want to mention one other thing. I am going to work very hard to find someone in that position that meets, this budget guideline. But I don't want to promise that the budget recommendation, that I come up with on April 13th will have this exact $92,261. It won't be that far off, but I just want, this committee to know that I'm not going to promise that it will be that. So,
No, my thoughts are with Lincoln was not possibly get rid of the administration position, kind of merge it with your assistant. Would that be possible?
I don't think
this
Yeah.
is appropriate.
What's that?
I don't think, we're pretty much talking about firing somebody, and that's not our place.
No. Promoting someone.
Promoting someone, okay, not our
Yes.
place. So I
All
think,
right.
I think I would just come back to with the amount of work in a town of our size, having a 3-person town administrator office is, I don't know of a town that has fewer than 3. I guess
Okay.
if I can answer it in that way.
No, I just
All
looked at Kathleen's question though, or not question, or comment. The salary went up for 40% 3 years ago. That's all. My concern is that. You can kind of work with that. I'd be happy with that.
Understood.
I think part of the answer to that was the expectation that the former assistant was to be the eventual town administrator. I think, right, I think that was part of the motivation for increasing the salary. You
Correct.
remember that part of it? Yeah.
But
Okay.
that didn't come to
I
fruition.
think this could simply be handled by just when the decision is made, it's presented with examples of other towns, and that we are making the best choice for the community financially and what the community needs. That way we're just looking at numbers and not speculating, we have them. So when Lincoln does do his research, maybe he could kind of give us a briefing.
All right, any other questions regarding any of the other line items within the selectmen department? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on then to the next department, I guess, the LAR account, lines in between 54 and 57. 57 is a total LAR account. Lincoln, anything to report?
Sure. Yeah, so the, okay, hang on just one moment. I want to pull up one other piece of information. So this amount, I'm certainly trying to limit the use of this account. We have had quite a lot of legal work that needed to be done during this current fiscal year. As far as what exactly it's going to be in the next fiscal year, it's extremely hard to guess, right? We don't know what lawsuits may come our way. We don't know what real estate transactions may come our way. We don't know, maybe one of the biggest items is we don't know how involved collective bargaining may be, right? So especially with respect to how long of a contract for our 5 townside unions, it might look like. So I do think level funding it is wise. With all that in mind. So happy to take any questions about that.
All right, so the total projected increase for that particular department is 2.4%. Anybody have any additional questions regarding that department, LAR account? All right, seeing none. And correct me if I skip over something, line 78, 79, and 80. Is that within the registrar's?
Yes, 78 and 79 and 80 are part of the registrars. I believe you folks heard from the registrars when you heard from the town clerk, possibly. Is that correct?
I believe the report included that. And
Yep.
correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Okay. So that would move us to line 91, custodial maintenance service.
Yeah, so is this, so just to clarify, I apologize because I wasn't here when you heard from the other departments. So did you, when this committee met with Bob Curran, was there a discussion at all about his duties as facilities manager or not?
Not as much as we would like, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
Historically, we get a report from the facilities manager. Sometimes that would be referred to the capital committee. In previous years, going back quite a while ago, the capital improvement advisory committee was the former building facilities capital expenditure committee. And that report would go to that committee and the town administrator. So, yeah, so.
I guess I would say,
recall the specific information about facilities manager from the building department presentation? I don't think he gave any detail about that aspect of his duties.
I think what I would suggest, if it's okay with the committee, is that, Bob could speak, in his role as facilities manager, with that hat on. I think he could speak more intelligently about this than I am, and I actually think it would be appropriate, if he was the one to do it. So what I'd suggest, Mr. Chairman, if we could, is perhaps at next week's meeting, if you want to drop an email to Bob with a CC to me asking him to attend and discuss this, would that Would that
sounds
be,
fine with me. Is that
would that be
amenable
okay
to
with the
board?
committee?
Yeah, just historically, this one has been presented by the town administrator, but I'm fine with whatever direction you want to go in.
Yeah, I mean, so that, and that's obviously a longer conversation, but I do, I would consider this to be part of the facilities, area of knowledge and expertise, and as such, I'd like him to address it, but
No problem at all.
sounds good.
Okay. Anybody, any questions on that?
Rick,
Go
I've
ahead,
just lost
Christine.
track of what line you're talking about, because my line 91 doesn't have anything to do with the Bob Curran.
Well, it has to do with the custodial and maintenance services, and what our town administrator is saying is that would be better explained by the facilities manager.
Nope, sorry. I had my spreadsheet aligned improperly. I'm with you now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Okay, so line 101, 102, 103, town reports and mailings. Nothing really out of the ordinary there. Telephone system. So the only reason why I'm going over these ones are because they weren't covered by department heads. So
Sure.
like I said, chime in if
Yeah.
you want and let it go if you don't. That's all.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to answer any further questions, and I also, yes, absolutely, I'm happy to answer any further questions.
All right, and then we go to line 217. animal
I had a
control.
quick question.
Go ahead, Rosemary.
And this is just because the town administrator line went down, but it's up right now. Is that right? I'm not looking at it. I thought it went down this year. No, was I wrong? I must be wrong.
You are definitely wrong. The town administrator salary?
Apparently, yeah, I thought the salary went down for 1 year and then the contract does it, but for 1 year there was a savings. Am I wrong? I thought that's what was being said.
The town administrator, you're saying?
Yeah, I'm sorry for doing this to you, Lincoln.
It's okay. It's all right. Yeah, so what's the dollar amount in there now for fiscal year 2022 is reflects the contract amount.
Okay,
As
the
signed,
increase.
as signed with the Board of Selectmen, correct?
Okay, all right. So that was just this, we saved for this 2021 numbers saved. Okay,
Right,
Thank
so that's correct.
okay, thank you.
Animal control, line 217. Animal control has changed hands quite a few times in the last several years. Under whose purview with the animal control at this point?
Yeah, so I think I'm happy to answer any questions about that. There's no, there's no significant change there. In fact, there's no change there. But happy to answer any questions about it that folks may have.
Anybody?
Well, is it the police department or is it the Board of Health that's supervising animal control?
At this moment, it's the town administrator. It's
It's
me.
you. Okay,
At this moment. Yep.
okay, thank you.
You're
John Galvin.
Is it the intention to keep it that way, or are you looking for a new home there?
welcome.
Don't have
That's
to
a-
say.
Yeah, it's a personnel thing. I'd rather not talk
Okay,
about. this moment.
sorry. I should have known that.
It's okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And then we go to the Veterans Department. We don't hear from the Veterans Department directly. So that particular lines 219 to 223 or 224 being the total.
And I actually, as this committee may know, there is a new veteran service officer. And I actually think it would be great if you folks, when you had Bob in or the next week, I actually think it would be great for you folks to meet her and for her to talk about her own budget. So
Okay.
if that suits the committee, like the facilities manager, I'd suggest that we do that. Or if folks really want to talk about it now, I'm happy to, but I think it would be great for you folks to meet her. So
Okay, and Lincoln, the name?
her name is Sarah Lansing.
Okay, we'll put an email out. Ken? You muted. Ken, you muted.
Sarah did come up to me last week with a question about her budget, so it's something I know she is working on, and would probably be open to meeting with you guys if one is scheduled.
Great, excellent. Great suggestion.
I called her the Veteran Service Officer. I'm sorry, the Veteran Services Director is her title. So just FYI.
Service Director, excellent. Okay, anybody, anything else on the Veterans Department? We'll look forward to then scheduling a meeting with that department. So then we go to line 244, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. If I missed anything, let me know. Line 244 is vacation for terminating employees.
Yeah, so as this committee probably knows, we're required by law to pay out the entirety of any accrued vacation time that an employee has when they are leaving employment, however they leave employment. So this numbers, would not increase from fiscal year 2021. And yeah, again, happy to answer any questions about it.
Just historically, we've have some significant questions in years past on large terminating employees' vacation payouts. And so I know that the agreements in the contracts for town employees now has been revised to reflect carrying over only a certain amount. So I think the days of us wringing our hands over these large payments are over. Would you agree?
I would agree with that, especially looking at our current collective bargaining agreements. And as you mentioned, what is and is not allowed to be carried over year to year. I would agree that this is going to be less of a liability than's been experienced in the past. Yes.
And again, my intent isn't to dredge up the past, but merely, shine a light on the fact that we're moving in the right direction, I think. Anybody
Agreed.
on that line? Okay. Okay, and street lighting?
Yeah, so I think, again, this is a standard article in any town's budget. As I'm sure this committee probably knows, the town purchased our street lights, I believe now 2 or 3 years ago. And this amount is not projected to rise from fiscal year 2021. And in fact, I would say stay tuned. I think Ken and I are certainly looking at that as a possible area of savings, but I'm not quite prepared to say what I think that number should be. But I do think it's likely to end up less than 100,000 in the April 13th presentation.
Excellent. And then I'll just, run down the rest of them if there's anything that you want to say. Park maintenance, historical commission, bylaw study committee, care of soldiers' graves, Memorial Day service, Whitman counseling. All those are projected out at level funding. Whitman will is line 252. Again, that's staying the same. Plymouth County Cooperative Extension. And then I think the rest have been covered by departments. Unemployment, medical, life insurance, town match, Medicare, tax, town match, county retirement. So some of those numbers have been recently changed, right, Ken? To reflect updated information.
There is just that one number that Mary Beth had from last week that went down a whopping $3.
Oh, that was at $3, right?
Yeah.
And OPEB, you want to talk a little bit about OPEB, Lincoln? Is there any change in utilizing the meals tax to help pay this down?
No, not at the current moment. So one thing, and again, from a policy perspective, this isn't a conversation that I've been able to have with the full Board of Selectmen, but my intention would be to, and so let me back up. So currently the Plymouth County Retirement Association is due to be fully funded. That is to say, have the full amount available for all existing and projected retirees in fiscal year 2029. Now, that is allowed by state law to be farther out than 2029, quite a bit farther out. However, currently the Plymouth County Retirement Association Board has seen fit to have that at 2029. So that's one of the reasons, you know, amongst others, but one of the reasons, just so the committee knows, that our required contribution from the town to the Plymouth County Retirement Association has been climbing at a pretty good clip, is that board has made that decision. And I'm not criticizing that decision. I think it's, you know, I understand why they've done it, but it certainly has a significant impact on our budget. That said, one thing that I want to pursue as a policy that, you know, hopefully would gain some traction with the Board of Selectmen would be, once our full funding liability is satisfied currently in fiscal year 2029, that amount of money that we have been paying towards Plymouth County Retirement Association, that large amount of money each year, would instead go towards our OPEB, other post-employment benefits liability beginning in fiscal year 2030. So it's a longer term, you know, it's a longer term financial policy and goal that obviously needs to be fleshed out, but just so that this committee is aware of where I'd like to go with it.
Okay, very good. Any other questions on that? Okay, so line 262 and 263 are specific to the building facilities, which we can get information from Bob Curran when we have him in. Okay, am I missing any other lines?
Mr. Chairman, one other thing I want to mention, and I'd actually like Ken, so this is his area of expertise, I actually like Ken to mention is line 31 on the audit, on the annual audit. Ken's been working closely with our auditors for several months, and the fiscal year 2020 audit process is ramping up here in conjunction with Mary Beth Carter. So, you know, I'll have him just speak briefly about that. I don't think you've heard about that before, if you'd like.
Great, thank you.
So that line item is set at 45,000. In the years that I have looked back, we have not needed extra. That line has been plenty to cover what we've needed. I believe in the last contract that we have with our auditors, that line should come around the mid-30s. And if there's some money encumbered as well for this year to cover the auditing of the water sewer bills. So there's extra still in there that we're holding over for those. 45 should be more than enough for what we need. I would not advocate raising that. I believe we renegotiated their contract last year, so it will go up a little bit next year and the year after, but not enough to break the bank on that line.
Great. I think the importance of having that annual audit, because I know it was discussed in years past, do we need to have it every year? And the answer was yes. There's definitely a value there to having an annual audit. One of the things that came out in the last couple of years was that vacation pay to terminating employees. It was a huge liability that caught the attention of the auditors and got the discussion going on, modifying the policy. So we didn't have that type of unfunded liability going forward. So again, I think we're moving in the right direction with that as well. So
I agree.
thank you, Ken. Any other questions regarding the audits? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Lincoln. That information we've been waiting for a while, the presentation on those particular departments, but understandably, having you coming in and getting your feet on the ground first is much more important than getting that information. So.
Well, I appreciate your patience, and obviously if there are any further questions about any of those line items or any line item, please do let me know, and I'm happy to get that information out.
Okay, so what is the will of the board? Would you like me to amend the posting for next week's meeting, to get the two individuals. Perhaps I send an email and get their schedule first. I think we could expect maybe give them 2 weeks. And that way I wouldn't have to amend the posting for next week to get the veterans representative in and get Bob Curran back in to discuss the facilities manager items. Is that the direction of the board? Anybody have any other thoughts?
No,
I think that's a good idea. I
Alright.
had just one quick question. Is there a planned change for the dog officer? I know, Lincoln, you're currently our dog officer, and I have to get my dog's tags. You don't have to tell me, you know. But will that have any effect in the line? We'll be looking to fund that more or less, or any idea of how that might affect it financially?
So, and to be clear, I'm not the dog officer, but the animal
I
control
want to be the
officer.
dog animal control. I want to have all the cats and kittens at my house.
oh,
But the
Rosemary.
animal control officer and the assistant animal control officer do at this moment report through to me. I don't expect a change at all in the budget line at this moment.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. All right, any other questions for Lincoln regarding Article 2 departments? Okay, seeing none. So correct me if I'm wrong, the board's will was then at our next meeting to do a review and bring forth questions on the other departments that made presentations to the finance committee so that Lincoln can get a sense from what was discussed previously and formulate some of a strategy for how we're going to move into a balanced budget to present at a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. So I think that's the plan. I think I have reviewed back to the meetings with all the other departments myself to formulate some questions or some comments that I think will be a benefit to Lincoln. And from there, the goal, I guess, is then to work to get this budget in a balanced state. Does anybody have any other suggestions on the direction that the board is moving? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move into our, one more thing, I guess, with the budget and the town warrant. So one of the discussions that I had with Lincoln and Ken this afternoon, very briefly, was to talk about the anything that needs to be on the warrant. Because Lincoln, correct me if I'm wrong, you want to present the draft warrant to the Board of Selectmen next week? Is that the timeline?
That is my current plan, yes.
Okay, so one of the things that's kind of outstanding, I guess, is whether or not we need to create a warrant article regarding the clerk's, the town clerk's salary. So I did forward an email, ironically, that came from the town clerk today in reference to her request for a salary increase. And I know we had this discussion before quite a bit about the 2004 town meeting that created the warrant article to have both a longevity stipend and a longevity salary increase. So part of the discussion should be, how do we want to proceed with this? I think when we discussed it last, the board made some suggestions that one of them was to determine whether this article had been rescinded at a subsequent town meeting. I think that's been established, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this has not been rescinded at a subsequent town meeting and that the provisions of this article still stand. So again, just to go over kind of like a quick synopsis, the motivation, I guess, for this article at the 2004 town meeting was to create some parity with a union provision that allowed the hybrid Lexington plan or the 555 plan. So this article, as I was told by the former town administrator, Frank Lyman, was to create some parity and to offer these individuals that are mentioned in the article, the town clerk, the town collector, and the treasurer, that same provision where they had the 5%, 555. So I guess now here we are, from what we've been told, that provision now has been eliminated from collective bargaining agreements. The hybrid Lexington plan is no longer part of the collective bargaining agreements for employees of the town. So I guess the question to the committee is, should we still then have the provision available to these individuals moving forward?
It is
Rosemary.
available grandfathered in. So we have provided it as it was grandfathered. I do think when it is voted in on the floor, people have spoken and they have said that they want this. And I don't think any committee should override what's been voted on the floor. I think that we should handle it in the ways that we've handled it in the past, and it should mirror every other. And I want to caution, because we've seen all men and here we are getting on 2 women. You know, we shouldn't be treating this differently. It should just be treated the same. That's all.
I'm certainly not bringing this up because of the gender of the individuals.
I know,
involved.
but I'm
Yeah.
just saying for the visual, you know, just, it could be said. Because I mean, we've had primarily men, and here we have somebody, the town has voted in something and said, this is what we want. And, you know, we're discussing
All right.
anyways, that's all.
All right. Appreciate your comments, Rosemary. Dave.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to give the member Rosemary Conley a chance to redact her ridiculous comment.
Well, I don't think any.
Dave, hold on 1 second.
Rosemary, that doesn't require a response.
Oh, no. I do hope we can be kinder to
All right,
each other. Now, what was your problem? What didn't you like about what I said?
This has nothing to do with a person's sex or gender. This has to do with,
I'm saying that
2.
because prior people primarily have been male. And this is the first time we've ever had this discussion. And I would say that we would have to be careful. So it might not have to do, but it could be seen as, okay? Now, I would hope in the future you would find a kinder way to say that.
Here's a
Thank
setting
you very
again,
much,
Rosemary.
David.
well, I can't find anything kind to say about it because it's absolutely.
David.
You're asking me a
Well,
question.
All right,
my
I'm
answer.
gonna hold the discussion.
I think we should review our law
Rosemary?
review. I think
Rosemary, I'm
I
gonna
think I
hold the
would,
discussion.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for your opinions. I understand both points. I want to move forward with the discussion. So the discussion before us is, is there some way that we want to create parity now that this is no longer a provision that's available for employees, union employees? The 555 hybrid Lexington plan, as we're going to call it, is no longer available to union employees. This, in its form from the 2004 annual town meeting warrant, is the article that was created to allow those individuals to have that benefit. So do we want to create an article for town meeting to rescind the provisions of the 2004 warrant article that created this parity that no longer exists? That's the question before you.
The question needs
Discussion is
one,
open. Rosemary, I'm gonna go to
the
a
one
new
question
person
is
first.
we recognized grandfathered in contracts after we had eliminated them for new contracts. These should follow along with the grandfathered in contracts, and we shouldn't view them any differently.
Okay, yep, you made that point. Thank you very much. Al?
Now, my question is, Rosemary, do we have the proof that it was grandfathered in? You tell me.
It was voted on.
I
There were
guess the-
people, yes, it was agreed to
I guess-
before it wasn't a new contract.
Rosemary,
wasn't
I
new.
guess the question is when Bob Curran received it, if that's what you're going at,
Thank
was it still active at that time? Is that
Thank
the
you.
proper scenario?
I think
So-
that's what you're saying. When Bob Current received it, we had already eliminated it from new contracts.
No, we had not.
We
It
had
got
not eliminated.
No, it only got eliminated 2 years ago.
So Bob
Part of
Curran.
the bargain 2 years ago,
eliminated.
it
It's
got voted
eliminated.
out.
Okay.
So,
So
I mean,
I think, I
Go
but
think,
ahead,
still,
Mark.
I
Go
mean,
ahead, Chuck.
I agree that it should be carried forward in Article 2, just like we always have. We're not a policy board. Let the Board of
But-
Selectmen set the
thank you.
policy. We're not a
Okay,
policy
Chuck.
board. Why are we setting policies? That's
Chuck, go
my
ahead.
opinion.
right, yeah, I agree with all that. We can say, and I mean, it can always town floor, you know, the FinCom, we can discuss it, deliberate it. We can recommend the line item going up, or we can recommend it down, and then town floor can vote it. And then maybe after this point, an article to rescind that because the parity no longer exists. Maybe that's the route to go.
Okay, so is it a sense of the board? Go ahead, Kathleen.
My only comment is that I think of this in similar vein to the vacation pay, where it was rescinded or it was terminated. So people who were retiring could put in for vacation pay. And I believe it was the Council of Aging director who retired, anticipating that she was still eligible, and it had been eliminated. So if this is something that needs to be eliminated for future employees, then it should come through, I believe, the policymakers. But the existing people who are covered by it, and I think it's a very discrete number of people, it's not an infinite number, those people are entitled to benefits that they won at, that were negotiated and approved at town meeting, whether it was 2004 or 2018. So I think we go forward with the current appropriation, and if somebody wants to make a change in the policy for future employees, that's fine. But I think grandfathering is important. You have long-term employees who are working for us under certain impressions or certain protections, and they don't want to have the rug pulled out from underneath them at the very last minute.
Sure. And can I just back up a little bit? I think the purpose of having this discussion was that we were talking about someone that was requesting a 5% increase in their salary. Simply put, the recommendation of the Finance Committee would be what would be put on the line item. So having this discussion is strictly financial. It has nothing to do with gender, and it has absolutely nothing to do with policy. It really has to do with a financial decision of this board for a recommendation to the voters of the town of Whitman. So
Yes, and
yeah.
would it be okay to do exactly what we had done prior to with everybody else that had been grandfathered or had that, take the same steps in funding it?
And if that is the will of this committee, I'm fully for it. So that's why we are a 9-member board. So anybody else want to make a comment regarding this? Go ahead, Dave.
Well, one issue that I have is that if this money does makes its way onto Article 2, where should it go? Should it go under the salary of the person requesting it, or should it be a separate line item? My personal opinion is it should be a separate line item, because what I've seen in the past is when there's personnel rollover, and then the new person coming in, and this isn't directed towards you, Lincoln, but it is directed towards other department heads we just recently saw, is that the new department head coming in now it gets the same exact salary as the person who had left. So if we artificially inflate that line item, this new person coming in is going to ask for it could possibly ask for that higher salary.
Okay, good point, Dave. Thank you very
Good
much.
point, Dave. Good point.
Okay, so I guess, Lincoln, the decision will be with the Board of Selectmen. Maybe you could pass on the fact that, the discussion was had within the Finance Committee, and if there's a recommendation to rescind or modify the article that was presented in 2004, that the board's consensus, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's a policy decision that should be made by the Board of Selectmen. Does that seem like the general consensus of the Finance Committee? Does anybody disagree with that? Okay, all right. So that's it for budget on the agenda. We could move on then. If there are no further questions regarding the budget discussion, we could move on to subcommittee reports. Building Facility Capital Expenditure Committee. Dave, anything to report out of that committee?
No, with the warrant being closed, I asked the town administrator to forward over a copy of the request that he received, just to reconcile it with the copies of the request that we received as a committee, make sure that nothing falls through the crack. That's it.
Okay.
And Dave, if I may, I'll be doing that this week. It's something I'm collating by tomorrow. It should be done by tomorrow.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Lincoln. Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, nothing to report, no meeting scheduled. Middle School Building Committee,
We have a meeting scheduled for next Monday at 5 o'clock. So I should be able
Okay.
to have some updated information by next meeting.
okay, great, thank you. Whitman Hanson Regional School District Assessment, Kathleen, I know you've been watching religiously the goings on of the
Yep.
school committee. Anything you want to report back out?
Well, I did email Jeff Simonek, and he did get back to me late today, and it had to do with how they calculated the local assessments, because last year there was a very detailed explanation of how they went from the $55 million total assessment to subtracting local aid, adding in transportation, subtracting other things, and then subtracting minimum local contribution before they divided it 60-40. And Jeff said that at this point in time, and we know they're currently still talking about the budget, he and John Tuffy are not in a position to give me the detailed line item of how they came up with the what's more than 16, I think it's $16.8 million assessment for us, but that once they get a more finalized budget, which I believe they'll be voting on Wednesday, he and John Tuffy will give me the details of how they came up with the local assessment, because that's the big dollar that we have to crunch when we start talking about the deficit. I'm sure Lincoln is in contact with Jeff on a much more frequent basis than I am, but that's where it stands now. I can't give you an explanation on the local assessment until I get more information from Jeff.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathleen. Anybody, any questions regarding that process? I think we're 2 weeks away from probably getting a recommendation from the school committee. Is that pretty much the timeline? Okay, so non-mandated busing. I know, Lincoln, you have had a conversation with the superintendent about perhaps getting some more information about how they could crunch the numbers. Would you like to report out on?
Yeah, nothing except, I mean, I did have a conversation with Superintendent Simonek, and he assured me that, so the contract negotiations for busing, I'm not sure they're occurring now, but I think, as this committee knows, the contract does expire on June 30th. So I'm sure that at some point over the coming months, if they haven't begun it yet, that the negotiations, that they'll be either, that they'll either be renegotiating that contract, putting it out to bid again. I'm not sure. But I have had the conversation with Superintendent Simonek, and he assured me that they'd be looking at efficiencies as they follow that process.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody, any questions on that? All right, and any information from Hanson on moving forward with the audit, or any discussions? You're still working to get that discussion with the Board of Selectmen on the audit?
Yeah, so just to clarify on that, so I know that, while Hanson has appropriated funds for that, Whitman has not. I think the board knows that. I'm not sure. I guess the point is that if the community wants to pursue that audit, then funds need to be appropriated for it. I think that's sort of the sum total of where we're at.
Right. Is it your intention to include it on the warrant, draft warrant?
I don't have a definitive answer for you on that right now.
Very good. Yep.
Sorry. I mean, so yeah.
Well,
Rosemary?
wouldn't that give the community an opportunity to state if they wanted to pursue it? If you put it on the warrant, if they vote it down, it's a no. If they vote it for it, it's a yes. They'd like to pursue it.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly, I mean, that certainly would be within, if this committee has a strong desire to pursue it, What I'd suggest is certainly it's within your purview to recommend a budget that includes it. So on the one hand, I don't have a definitive answer for you about whether or not the April 13th recommendation will include it or not, but absolutely, it's obviously within this committee's purview to recommend a budget that includes it. So
Okay.
is that,
All right.
I mean,
Yeah, no,
is that a little
we
bit of a better
understand.
answer, I hope?
We understand fully. Kathleen, did you want to?
I just want to remind everyone, not that they need a lot of reminder, that this was a hot potato issue last year when the statutory issue surfaced its ugly head and finally was resolved. And there's some real distrust in terms of not individuals. This particular school administration inherited a method of spending money. And Jeff has had three interesting years, one after the other with challenges that he's managed to address and work to the best of his ability. But I think that we need some outside pair of eyes looking at how the school department has spent money over the years without pointing fingers at this administration. That's not the intent. I'm not happy with the way that the non-mandated busing is done. I don't think there's any incentive for them to be financially conservative because they just hand us a bill and we fill out the check. So I think that some pressure has to be put on the school department to examine the way that they look at spending money. And I think an outside audit that we thought was really important last year, and I think it was the selectmen who were the initiators of this, not the finance committee. I think it's something that we should continue to pursue.
Appreciate your comments, Kathleen. Chuck?
Yeah, I'll second that, and I'll just say the reserve fund is at 37,000. Take some out of there.
So I guess it would be beneficial to Lincoln if he had a sense from the board. Is there anybody that does not feel that we should be moving in the direction that was started to, and again, I think Kathleen said it perfectly. It's not, it's not because, there's anything specific that we're very concerned about, but if we have a relationship based on trust, I think we need to have financial, independent eyes to take a look and give us some feedback. John Galvin.
Yeah, I'm for exactly what everybody's talking about. The only concern that I have is now we're greatly assisting Hanson in getting information they would need to support their vote to deregionalize. And I think that's something that there a lot of information that'll come from that they will use to benefit themselves. And that's, I hate to do that, but I'm still, I'm open either way. I mean, I see the benefits. That's my only
I do have to
concern.
ask.
Can I
where
finish?
we're
Can I
getting-
finish? Faith?
It's not true.
What do you mean?
Rosemary, hold on.
Okay, Rosemary, you've been cutting into everybody all night long.
Go ahead, John.
Okay.
When it's your turn, when
Okay,
you
John,
want to
go ahead.
talk,
Listen. We're
raise
listening,
your
we're listening.
hand and the chairman will
Okay.
tell you it's your turn to talk.
Mhm.
Okay? Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, thank you, John. Rosemary.
There are rules that have to, there's math behind a deregionalization. They have to be approved by the state. You can't just decide to deregionalize and walk away. There is a cost of scale that would be determined, and I think it's done through the Suzanne Bump's office. And Hanson does not have a town enough students to support their own, to support deregionalization. So according to, when I spoke to Suzanne Bump's office, the person who did the audit, so is this an honest conversation? Should we look at that math first? Should we talk to people from the state first before we even say that? And if it helps them, if they're going to deregionalize, they're going to deregionalize. That doesn't mean we shouldn't put the information out there for everybody. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think, I feel as if we're putting a boogeyman out there that it doesn't seem to be real.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much about the regionalization either, but I understand, John, your concern. Dave.
I don't think anybody on this committee is in the position to know whether or not Hanson, make a decision on behalf of Hanson on whether or not they have enough students to deregionalize or not. But to support, to back up John's statement is that essentially they're going through a study that may make it to DESI. The study, the information that they're looking for in that study could be supplemented in the audit that we're all talking about. So the question is, do we want to supplement Hanson's study of deregionalization with Whitman tax dollars?
No.
That's the question at hand.
Okay, it's a valid point.
Right.
I just think the timing, I mean, if we initiate the funding for this audit isn't going to happen, for 6 months, probably. So, I mean, I think by that time, it's all conjecture, but the discussion of Hanson's deregionalization will probably have long since expired. But the point is valid, but I guess does the benefits that we discussed about the reasons why we wanted to have this audit, I think far outweigh any other problem that it could create or benefit to another town. I mean, I think the reasons why we talked about this and we were pretty passionate about it for the last couple of years is because we need to rebuild that trust. And we really need a set of outside eyes looking at the finances of the regional district. I think that's the bottom line. So is there anybody else that wants to talk specifically about this? And I guess it would be beneficial to Lincoln to have a roll call vote, I would imagine. Does anybody have a problem with that? Okay. So I will entertain a motion to recommend to Lincoln to bring forward the audit on the warrant for this fiscal year.
I make that motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Point
Any
of order.
discussion? Dave? Go
Yeah,
ahead, Dave.
the warrant's closed.
Correct.
The draft warrant is going to be presented by Lincoln next week.
The draft, the warrant is closed. The ability for anyone to bring forth a request for a warrant article is closed.
Correct.
Okay, Lincoln, can you expound on that?
Sure. So, yes, the warrant is closed for new warrant articles. It's up to town. It's up to town meeting. Obviously, I do think that that the monies, that Whitman's share of the monies could be appropriated in the budget, which is not finalized, not in an individual, set alone warrant article. So, it would certainly be in, it would certainly be fine to include those monies on the budget. I'm going to speak carefully here. I would stress the members of the committee that are discussing what impact data from this audit might have on the deregionalization effort from Hanson. And I'll leave it at that, but I share those concerns. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. With that, we'll take a roll call vote to get a sense of the board on whether we want to pursue, by whatever means, the audit of the regional school district. Does that satisfy you? Clarification, Dave?
Well, yeah, I'd like to have further discussion on it.
Okay, go ahead.
What are we voting on?
We're voting on whether we support having an audit of the regional school district. I think that was what Lincoln wanted, the information, whether this board supported the audit. That was his request.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Go ahead. Go ahead, Lincoln.
I'm obviously happy, and it would be very, very helpful to know the committee's position on it. Just to be clear, though, I didn't request that. So I mean, it's helpful to know the committee's sense of it. I'd certainly take it under advisement when I'm preparing an April 13th budget, a recommended budget. But, I just want to be clear. I didn't request this, but of course the committee's welcome to take a vote on just about any matter it wants to. So,
Okay.
is that?
Yes, that helps. Thank you,
Okay.
Lincoln. Rosemary.
I'd like some clarification. What about this audit that would make anybody nervous, would promote Hanson's reason to deregionalize? If there's something that people want to share that they know that that isn't in any obvious numbers that I've seen, please do. What about the audit would support Hanson's deregionalization? If it's not supported in Suzanne Bump's audits for the range of students that you would need to get a cost of scale, so it's not supported in those numbers, and it's not supported in, they'll be losing a lot from the amount of students that they've lost. What do they call that? $4 million in support. So what about it? So do you have numbers or any information that you want to share that would support it? Because I'm seeing
Rosemary? Yeah,
So-
who are you directing the question to? Anybody
3 people who said that they
have
know,
concerns
Lincoln,
about?
they have
the
concerns. I'm asking where are those concerns rooted?
Rosemary, you're misunderstanding what we're saying. We're not saying that we know what the data is. We're saying that the data that results from the investigation will benefit Hanson. It will not benefit Whitman.
Why would it not benefit Whitman?
Excuse me, I retract that.
So the reason, I guess we're losing track of the reason we're asking for the audit. I guess it really is getting a little bit, confused even for me.
Yeah, I'm okay with Hanson having a benefit from something that also benefits us equally. That's perfectly fine. I think it came up because Hanson had a benefit from something that did not benefit us. So I'm okay with mutual benefit. I just want to know, is there something that you want to bring up that would, because I don't want a boogeyman where there might be something. If there's something, please speak to it.
Okay, Lincoln.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I
Yeah,
want to
go
be
ahead.
very clear. There is no specific piece of information that gives me concern. It is more a general thought that the simple fact of conducting the audit indicates that there may be some issue. I have no indication that there is any issue. I think it simply continues a conversation, that in the public's mind might encourage the deregionalization effort, but with no specific hard information that I know of whatsoever. No.
Okay, thank you, Lincoln. Kathleen.
Okay, I'd like to put this as simply as I can. The reason that I support this audit is because everyone involved with the schools last year thought that they knew how to do the statutory method, or they were calculating the assessment correctly until it was pointed out to them that they weren't. What else is going on that Jeff has inherited from prior administrations that has not been uncovered? And that's the only reason I am interested in this audit, is having an outside pair of eyes take a look at what has Whitman Hanson been doing for the last 20 something years since they regionalized that is not consistent with what DESE wants them to do. And if the old administrations, which had more experience than Jeff and George Farrow, told Jeff this is the way things are going, then I think they need the assistance of an outside pair of eyes telling them these are the practices that are consistent and these are the practices that are not consistent with the current regulations that DESE and other regulatory agencies are looking for. I'm not interested in the benefit to or from or plus or minus either town. I think that this audit will help me anyway, as a Whitman resident, believe more in the credibility of the school budget. And it's going to be a $57 million budget. I'd like to know that they're following practices that are consistent with the state's rules and regulations.
Okay, I certainly don't want to limit discussion. If there are other people that want to chime in, I definitely do not want to leave anybody that has not spoken the opportunity to do so. But I think very simply, this vote is just just as Kathleen said, it's just an opportunity for an independent set of eyes to take a look at the district's budget. And I think the other concerns are founded, but I think they don't outweigh the need to have the audit, in my opinion. Anybody else? Dave.
Well, Lincoln's not asking for a vote, and I would be hesitant to vote on anything that's not that's not clear and concise. So, I mean, in past doings, we've had just a roll call opinion that gives a sense of, what the collective board feels. So I don't think a vote is appropriate this time. I think just a yay or nay is appropriate this time.
Well, I think that's what a vote is, Dave. And we have a motion on the floor and a second.
No,
So
well,
we're gonna-
no, it's
If
not.
there's no
it's not
further
a- it's not a
discussion,
vote. Yeah, I have further discussion, Rick.
go ahead.
Because it's not a vote, because what's going to happen is that someone's going to take this information and say on March, whatever today's date is, on March 15, 2021, the Whitman Finance Committee voted this. We're not voting on anything. We're simply providing an opinion on whether or not we would support something. That's two different things. And if you can't see that, then I don't know what the purpose of you being a chairman is.
I was
You've made
voting
that
for
point
it.
before, Dave.
I was thinking it was a vote for it, and it would just parallel exactly with what Hanson has done financially. I mean, it wouldn't do anything different. So that's what I thought. I didn't think we were voting for who supports it, but are we going to put it out
Well,
there?
I think at some point, the
Well-
Hanson Finance Committee had a vote to recommend moving forward with the appropriation. So I don't think a vote is out of order, to be perfectly honest with you. So
What line item are we gonna fund it under?
we don't have that information yet. That's up to Lincoln to move
So we're,
forward.
we're
Well,
voting
how
a
much
line,
is it?
we're voting something in without knowing where we're gonna put it or how much it is.
We're
So
voting,
how much money is it going to be? And where are we gonna put it in the budget? Since once we approve it now, it has to go in there somewhere. So
no,
we don't,
no, that's not the vote,
yeah,
John.
yeah,
The
it is,
vote
because
was-
we voted for it. If we vote for it, then we, first of all, we don't know how much it is. So we're voting for something we don't know how much it is. And secondly, we're voting for something that we don't know what line in the budget it's gonna go. Because it's not gonna be a warrant article, it's gonna go into Article 2 somewhere. So by voting it now, by voting yay or nay or abstaining or whatever we're gonna do, we're automatically inserting it into the Article 2. And I think that's premature to do that now until we know where we can put it and where it's gonna go and how much it's gonna cost.
Kathleen,
Okay, so it's my understanding that the agreement last year between the two towns was they were going to split the cost 50-50. And Hanson appropriated $14,000 for this audit at their October 3rd town meeting. So I think we're looking at a $14,000 cost. And it was the prior town administrator who told us he had money. And that was one of the problems that we dealt with, was where was the money coming from? Nobody asked him. He just said he had the money. Now we're in a flip situation where we want the audit, or at least I do. I want the information. And so I think I empathize with Dave where, in terms of we want to vote up or down, whether or not we want the audit. The specifics of where it goes and what line item it goes into, I guess, is a technicality that has to be dealt with. But I think the position of this committee at least should be known. Do we approve the audit, yes or no? And I can retract my motion and rephrase it if it makes it easier for people to understand what we're doing with this vote.
okay, let's hear from Chuck next and then Al.
I just want to say, Kathleen, great memory. I thought we supported this
We did.
when it came up, just like she said with Frank. And the problem was the money. He said we were going to get the money from somewhere, and we never did. So it was never official. But I believe this board supported it the last time it came up.
I believe
That's
you're
it.
right as well. Al,
I'll concur with the Kathleen and Chuck, and that was there. I remember that meeting very well.
okay. So Kathleen, would you like to rescind your vote and somehow paraphrase it in a way that would satisfy Dave and John's concern?
I guess the motion is that I move that this committee take a vote to affirm its position on going forward with the funding of an audit as discussed last year, to have a forensic audit of the Whitman Hanson Regional School District that is equally shared by both towns.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ralph.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. Okay, further discussion. So just to be clear, that we will need to have a subsequent vote when we do, if we do in fact move forward to talk about the funding, there'll be a subsequent vote to discuss if it would be placed and how it would be placed on a special or annual town warrant. So there's many other votes beyond this. I just think that Kathleen worded it very well. And we're just looking, it is really a position of the board. Okay, further discussion. Seeing none. John Galvin,
I abstain.
Al,
Yes.
Dave,
Abstain.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Samantha, did you get that?
Yes, I have 2 abstaining and the rest, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, I think that exhausts the old business items. Lincoln, is there anything you would like to follow up on in a report?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay,
No, thank you.
thank you. Ken, anything from the accountant's office?
Nothing new here that hasn't already been covered.
Okay, excellent. Does anybody wish to bring anything else up under good of the order? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, John Galvin,
Yes.
Al,
Yes, sir.
Dave,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Rosemary.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all very much for your participation. Samantha, thank you very much for taking the minutes, and Whitman Hanson Cable Access for providing this venue. And we'll see you all next week. Lincoln, thank you. Ken, thank you as well.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Good night.
Good
Night,
night.
everybody.